We got ourselves a war, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash that like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support this college football rebel outpost with a donation. Hit the $ where you make a comment and I'll get you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio. Everybody. And I'm including the 10 FBS commissioners. I'm including Bavakwa, the athletic director of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I'm including everybody in the PATC family. Welcome into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with the comments in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. Welcome to a Tuesday, early evening, late afternoon, depending on where you are in this country of ours, February 25th. The summit has occurred. A long meeting in Dallas, Texas. 11. You see how there's 11 people in a circle there? 10 FBS commissioners and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, we are going to go through some news real quick here. we're going to go through some posts that the reporters had posted. Between the time of about, now right now it's 5:05 p.m. Central Time. Between 4:05 and about 5 between 4:05 and about 4:45, I have been poking and prodding. And the information that we have received here at Peek Around the Corner, doesn't quite match up to the perception of those who are listening to the reporters and what they have to say, because quite honestly, the commissioners are not talking too much. Now, Jim Phillips just said something. Let's go through the reporters posting, and then I'm going to give you my information on us poking and prodding. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I did not talk to Petiti. I did not talk to Petiti. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't say this lightly, but I think we got a war going on here in college football among the FBS. Okay, let's go through some of this reporting, and I do apologize. It's not in chronological order, so it's going to be a little mismatch, but let's go through this the best we can. Chris Vanini, the college football meeting has ended with no decisions on 25 and 26 and beyond. The ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips says various models were discussed for all, more convos coming. Greg Sankey and Tony Petiti left without speaking to reporters. Now, I mean, Tony Petiti not talking to reporters. That was minus 7,500 on the Vegas odds that he was going to speak to a reporter. In other words, if you were to lay down $100 at CFP, on any given Saturday sportsbook here in the middle of Heisman City, you would have gotten $7,500 if Petiti would have spoke on a $100 wager. That's how much of a chalk that it was that Tony Petiti would not talk to reporters. Sankey did not talk to reporters either. Let's get you some more information. Heather Dinich. The CFP meeting has ended without any decisions about seating changes for this year in 25, but they talked about it. Several commissioners said they need more information. Sankey and Petiti left without taking questions from reporters, but so did others. Ross Dellinger. Phillips says commissioners discussed 12, 14, and 16 team models on format. Now, this is part information, part speculation. But I think the 12-team model, I think that was part of the discussion of how it went and all that. The future is going to 14 or immediately to 16. To go to 16, as we all know, it's been reported, we've all talked about it here in the Peek Around the Corner family. that to go to 16, there's going to be more heavy lifting to do. You're going to have to do the heavy lift. You're going to have to renegotiate with ESPN. You got to figure out the scheduling of those first round games. There's a whole lot more heavy lifting to do. Now, it might grease the skids for more cooperation, more compromise for all parties, but there's going to be more work to do. Now, are they about to do the work? That's the question. 16 team models on the format, more talking, a little bit more delay on the decisions. Ross Dellinger again. The commissioners say they need more data and information from CFP staff before making a decision on any changes to this year's playoff, which requires unanimity. Big Ten and SEC want straight seeding. Well, I don't know if they want more data or information. I think, again, this is everybody pushing their chips in and trying to gain something out of this. You want straight seeding in 25, Big Ten and SEC? Then we want so-and-so 26 and beyond. If it's that important to you to have straight seeding in 25, well, we want a little bit of something different in 26 and beyond. How important is it to the Big Ten and the SEC to have straight seeding in 2025? Okay, let's go on to more here. This is very interesting. Very interesting. This was 17 minutes ago. Jim Phillips. For all of us, there's been somebody before us, and there will be somebody after us. You have to serve your constituents, but you can't be completely oblivious and not mindful for what's good for college football and the fans in what you're hearing from them. Who do you think Jim Phillips is talking to? Who do you think Jim Phillips is talking to when he said something like that? Coming out of the meeting. Petiti doesn't say anything. Sankey doesn't say anything. Jim Phillips, for all of us, there's been somebody before us and there will be somebody after us, and you have to serve your constituents. But you can't be completely oblivious and not mindful for what's good for college football and the fans in what you're hearing from. CFP Executive Director Rich Clark says again, historic data is needed to inform the decision on changing the 25 playoff format. I'm not buying that. Commissioners will meet again in March. In March, ladies and gentlemen. March is coming up. I think March is going to be a very important month for college football. We are looking at, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to the story here. We are going to get to the story of NIL, right? The NIL hearing in Congress, in the House on March 4th. March 4th. So yeah, we've got a lot of things going on. Look, I don't know how. I don't know a lot, ladies and gentlemen. I do not know a lot. I don't know how this is all going to end, and I don't know when it's going to end. Talking about 2025 playoffs and having the format change for 26 and beyond. But I can tell you what the Big Ten not only wants, but what they are demanding. We have known this for so many months. We came on here in September, and while people were talking about the 3-3-2-2-1 model and everything, we told you that the Big Ten wanted 4. Their media partners wanted 4. I can tell you between the time of 4:15 or 4:05 or whatever to 4:45, giving me just enough time to get this live show off the ground, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, the Big Ten believes they have done everything that has been needed with the SEC, with the advisory group, the give and take, the back and forth, Sankey and Petitti. There is, according to what I'm being told, is no light between the two. There's nothing between the two. You can't see a light between the two. They have hammered this out. Now it's about presenting in a fashion to where there's input from others, where others can speak their mind, where there's going to be some possible compromise. But out of this, the SEC is going to get what they want, and the Big Ten is going to get what they want. And hopefully others going to get what they want. But the Big Ten and the SEC, and again, I've said this from a personal standpoint, I don't like any of this. I like the playoffs the way they were in 24 and hopefully coming up in 25. I finally got what I wanted, and I'm going to lose it here real quick. I'm going to lose what I got. The playoffs that I have desired. It's going away. The message I got again today, just shortly before we came on live, after the reporters came out of Dallas, is the Big Ten is going to get what they want, and that's 4 automatic qualifiers, and the SEC is going to get 4. The ACC is going to get 2. The Big 12 is going to get 2. And there's a lot of other things to figure out. There is a lot of other things to figure out beyond that. And the input and everybody coming together and figuring out the schedule, figuring out the seeding. Does a conference champion get a top 8 bid? Or is it just straight seeding? There's going to be compromise. There's going to be compromise on multiple levels, but not on the automatic qualifiers. I would be absolutely stunned, and I told you all, I would take the L if it's not a 4-4-2-2-1, whatever. I will cover it, but because of what I'm being told is a strong, you cannot get any stronger, the message. The Big Ten and the SEC have acquired this power, and they're going to use it. And this is how they're using it. They know what each other wants, and they're going to back each other up. And this meeting was about letting other people talk. There wasn't even any specific official proposals coming from the Big Ten and the SEC, although everybody knows what they want. Everybody knows what they want. And here at College Football Peek Around the Corner, we are not going to hedge our bets. We're not going to hide if we're wrong. We've been saying this for quite a while. This is going to be a 4-4-2-2-1, and either it's going to be 1 at-large bid or 3 at-large bids. And if it's 1 or 3, that's going to affect how they're going to do the play-in games and all that stuff. But that is where we're going. And I think today was the day of other commissioners speaking their mind. The G5 speaking their mind, making sure that is, if the playoffs are expanded to 16, what about us? What about us? This is not just about the Big 12 and the ACC. But I think we got a little war going on coming out of this meeting. It's definitely not kumbaya, and I don't think anybody expected it to be kumbaya. The Big Ten and the SEC have acquired this power to change the format. Not completely. There's a couple of different protections in them, and we've talked about that. Those protections last until the end of the contract, 2031. But the Big Ten is getting their 4 automatic qualifiers. And how it works after that, the SEC is going to get their 4. But you know, there's so many other issues. For example, if we're sitting here in 2026 and the BYU Cougars win the Big 12 Conference Championship, they're the number 1 team coming out of the Big 12. However you want to describe that. Either they win the regular season or BYU wins the Big 12 championship game or they win whatever. However the Big 12 determines their conference champion and number 1 coming out of that conference. Let's say the BYU Cougars get it in 2026. We believe that college football is peak around the corner, that Brett Yormark is going to battle, and he's going to want BYU to have an automatic home game if they do not get a first round bye. In other words, if it's a 16-team playoff, the champions of the Big 12 are going to be in the top 8 and ain't going to be by no straight seeding. There is a lot going on. And I'm not going to pretend I know everything that's going on. No way, no how. But again, after poking and prodding, right after the meeting concluded, I was fortunate to have a long communication with a certain person, and they're telling me the Big Ten, they're not going to, they've got the power, so they're going to get what they want, and they want to be able to work with everybody else on all these other issues. And there's a lot of issues besides the automatic qualifying. And are we going to go to 14 and then 16, or are we going to go straight to 16? We are going to get to 16. I truly believe that. That's the chatter behind the curtain as well. But are we going to go to 14 and make sure that when we go to 16, there's a more favorable environment and multiple media companies bidding for those 15 playoff games instead of ESPN still owning all of it and possibly subleasing it to TNT? Are we going to go to 16 straight away, or are we going to make a pit stop at 14? But the automatic qualifiers, they're coming. We believe here at Peek Around the Corner, it's 4-4-2-2-1. And we'll take the L if we're wrong. But man, that is the message that I received. Not from a Big Ten source, from a national source. The Big Ten ain't going to walk away. They've done what they believe. They've done all the work with the SEC. There is no light between the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, couple things I want to get to. Greg, would the G5s include Memphis, USF, and Boise State? Yeah, because they're in the G5 right now. Jim Phillips is a great guy, but a weak leader. The ACC will draw the short straw. Greg and Tony were in a hurry to cruise Harry Hines Boulevard. Governance matters to them more. I would say that I think the Big Ten would believe that they're going to get their governance powers, that they only have to wheel and deal so much. They're going to, I know a lot of people disagree, but from everything that has been told to us since September 9th, the Big Ten is on the they're not going to budge from the 4 automatic qualifiers. And it is believed that the SEC is on board because the Big Ten is going to be given SEC support on other matters. We shall see. I'm willing to take the L, but after what I've heard again today, makes me sick thinking of 4 automatic qualifiers each. It's absolutely unfair playing field. And maybe that's what Jim Phillips was talking about here. A couple of other things that I want to get to here. And then we are going to get to your phone calls talking about the summit in Dallas. There was some breaking news earlier today. The House hearing on the NIL scheduled for March 4th. Congress of the United States, not the Senate, but the Congress, the House, is going to be having a meeting here. And Daniel Libet of Sportico covered it earlier this afternoon. College NIL to face first hearing in GOP-controlled Congress. The House Subcommittee on Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade is scheduled a hearing on college sports name, image, and likeness for March 4th, according to the notice sent Tuesday. The hearing titled Moving the Goalpost, How NIL is Reshaping College Athletics, will be the first such public session since the Republicans gained full control of the House, Senate, and White House last month. It also comes just ahead of NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments, a period that often attracts congressional attention to college sports issues. Ted Cruz, the chair of the Senate Commerce Committee, has also indicated plans to hold a hearing on NIL-related matters soon, though a specific date has not been set. I am going to add a link. That's about it. But I am going to add a link to the description box below the video so you can read the whole article. But March 4th is going to be a hearing. So we here at Peek Around the Corner, we're going to cover it. If there's any reporting, I'm sure there's going to be some reporting coming out of that House meeting. Congress is going to get involved here. Now, I will say, and I'm not going to go through the whole article, but at the very end, the Daniel Libet, who's been doing some incredible reporting, this is his final conclusion for today. Given the issue's complex history, the array of conflicting factors at play, and the GOP's narrow House majority, passing any substantive college sports legislation in 25 seems difficult at best. So, just some more not so good news as the leaders of college sports are looking for some direction, some carve out from the Senate, from the House, from anywhere, as more and more potentially lawsuits are going to be flooding their way once the House NCAA and the House settlement becomes official, if it does, on April 7th. So we shall see. Okay, couple other things. And then we're going to get to your phone calls. We just had to come on live here. Come on live to talk about the full FBS summit and get your take on it. But I will say this, Petiti and Sankey didn't say anything. They wanted input, they got it. There's going to be some compromise on some lower level issues. But we at College Football Peek Around the Corner do not believe there's going to be compromise on the automatic qualifiers. We think that's a fait accompli. We have for quite a while. I'm going to be absolutely shocked if it doesn't turn out to be 4-4-2-2-1. There are other issues to iron out. Lots of them. So we'll see how that goes. This Super League issue that has popped up once again. Now, I watched the Monty show this morning. He teased out yesterday about a Super League, about Big Ten and the SEC using private equity and bringing in some ACC and Big 12 schools and possibly some G5 schools. And it's a bombshell report. And I listened to him this morning. And I did not listen to the whole show. But I don't know. I'm still not quite sure what the report is all about. It's just my opinion. You might have a different opinion. But when I watched the Monty show this morning, he did not really define Super League. When he says the word Super League, he said something to the effect of, if the Big Ten and the SEC leave the NCAA and the other schools leave the NCAA, this new entity would be the Super League. And that the Gore would not have, you could get around the Gore because you're out of the NCAA. It made no sense to me whatsoever. And then later on, the Monty show talked about how the NCAA would not entirely go away anyways. Excuse me. So, I had a very difficult time figuring out what he was trying to do, what his definition of a Super League, because he says it's coming, but he doesn't say if it's is it going to be divisions? Are some Big Ten teams going to be playing in divisions with Big 12 teams? Is it going to be just one league? Is it going to be conferences? He talked about relegation at the end of the show. I could not make heads or tails of what he was saying. But anyways, if you agree with the Monty show, if you think a Super League is coming and it is going to be done primarily with the Big Ten and the SEC leading the way, let me know how you think it would all work. I've said this in the past. My take on the Super League is it could very well happen years down the road with the SEC and the Big Ten doing something together, expanding their conference, making a new entity. But I cannot imagine the Big Ten and the SEC bringing all these schools in the Big 12 and the ACC and some G5 schools with them. I cannot, how do I say this? How do I say this? Today on X, this happens probably once a week. Sometimes during some realignment waves, it basically happens every day. But I'll get people saying on X saying, you know what? Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, they're not going to be wanting to split the media money, the conference media money equally with your Vanderbilts, with your Purdue's, with your Mississippi States, with your Minnesotans. How long do you think they're going to be there and having their media money be evened out with everybody? Even distribution of the media money. They're going to want a little bit more. They're going to want a bigger cut because they're the bigger brands. You hear that from a lot of people. Okay, you know what? I can kind of buy into that. There could possibly be some adjustments. I mean, Ohio State already makes $100 million more than Northwestern. If the Buckeyes think they should make $5 million more and Northwestern $5 million less, maybe they can hammer it out. Maybe the conference that's been together for over 100 years can hammer it out. Maybe that will happen. But the same people, not everybody, but a lot of the same people who keep warning me that this could happen in the SEC and the Big Ten are also, the next day, they debate me on, look, there could be a Super League coming. There could be a Super League coming where private money all comes in. We all make more money and we're all even. Or maybe we're not all even, but we make all this more money. And to me, the logic, there's a big disconnect here. I've sort of opened up this envelope before. I've sort of given the peek on this before. I do not know how private equity is going to come in. I've said that 1,000 times. There's 1,000 rumors out there, and I think the Monty Show got caught up in one of those rumors. There's a lot of different rumors, guys. I mean, there is a lot of different rumors. There is, and maybe some of those are true. I don't know, man. We're going to find out together. But one of those things I've heard is if the private equity coming in at a conference level, it is so very difficult. So very difficult. There's a lot of difficulties to it. You know that Brett Yormark has received some offers. We know that. It's been publicly reported. We know, and then he had in those first offers, he would have to give up what, 15, 20% for so many years of the Big 12 equity stake. One of the things that we've been told here at College Football Peek Around the Corner is the difficulty of Brett Yormark getting everybody on board is some of the schools in the Big 12 have to take more of the risks. And some of the schools in the Big 12 are going to get more of the benefit. Even in the Big 12, we don't have these big, huge separation of different tiers. You got maybe 2 different tiers of wealth and value in the Big 12, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close of the 16 Big 12. But even in the Big 12, there are some that say, well, our valuation, a Kansas valuation, for example, we are bringing everybody up when it comes to this private equity deal. Other people are going to benefit more from this if it hits. It's the same thing. So think about it at a Super League level. Think about it as what Monty Show is saying, or I think he's saying, and other people are saying. When you've got billions of dollars coming into private equity, they're using the valuation of everybody that's in, every team that's in this Super League, and the Buckeyes and Michigan and Alabama and Georgia, they're carrying the weight They've got the eyeballs. They've got the brand value. I'm just being honest. You think they're uplifting the bottom half of the Big Ten? You betcha they are. Do you think Alabama in the top half of the SEC is lifting up the bottom half of the SEC? You bet you are. Now take that times 30 when you're thinking about a Super League with all the Big 12 and the ACC schools included in some of the G5. I'm just being honest. I'm being blunt. We'll see what happens, guys. I have had so many stories told to me on private equity from legit people that you would recognize the name if I told you. They have been hearing so many different stuff going on. It's hard, man. It is hard to include. When you are making the circle bigger and bigger and bigger, it is hard to make it happen. So, because I'm hearing all these difficulties of the Big 12 and all the difficulties of the ACC, my God, you try to create a Super League with everybody. I do not know how in the hell you get Ohio State on board with that, or Alabama. I mean, you get what I'm saying? Because they're taking on everything. They're taking on most of the risks. All right, enough of that. I'm going to get off that soapbox. But I just wanted to put that out there. Private equity invasion, I think it's coming. I just don't know how it's happening. But we are going to continue to follow that story among all these other stories that are going on in college football. But if you're one of those people that says, you know what, Greg? Minnesota, the Buckeyes are coming for an extra few $1 million. They're going to take it from you, Greg. I say, okay. But then you can't come back and say, oh, Greg, the Buckeyes are going to help fuel everybody making more. I mean, it's just, logically, it doesn't work, in my opinion. Okay, we're going to get to your phone calls here in a moment. Larry, the GM, is probably very mad at me. Because I predicted yesterday in a way too early 2025 playoffs. I've got the Texas Longhorns winning it all. The number 1 seed going into the playoffs, beating the Clemson Tigers in the championship game. But this is my way too early predictions. I get an opportunity to change everything in August, and I probably will. But right now, I've got Wisner, Manning, Simmons, and everybody. Anthony Hill, Trey Moore. August 30th at Ohio State. Texas visits the Buckeyes. Holy smokes. Anyways, Larry, the GM, is in the house. He's probably still mad at me for picking his Longhorns. Some of you are like the task propaganda for the Power 2. T5 Terps, your mark won't fight this. The 4-4-2-2 actually helps. Keeps teams in the ACC 1 and out. Michigan is back to true form. As is Penn State. No way does the Big Ten deserve more than 2 automatic qualifiers. Dallas Cowboys should get special treatment because they have more eyeballs and bring more money than any other teams. I personally agree. I do not want... Look, this is what I said on my Twitter account. This is what I said. Let me see. Hopefully I can find it here. I don't say many interesting things on X, but right here. I agree. So if multi-auto bursts for the power conferences ever come into play for men's basketball, for example, the Big Ten should receive less auto bursts than the other power conferences because of its inability to win many natties over the last couple of decades. Same with baseball, softball. I'm just throwing that out there. Right? If we are going to do this to football, if we're going to have automatic qualifiers to football based on historic averages, are we going to do that to baseball? Are we going to do that to basketball? Are we going to do that to softball? Is the Big Ten going to allow that? No. But you see, it's sort of... I got to be honest with you. You know, in my predictions yesterday, I didn't even notice this. I did not take this. I looked at the teams. You know, I'm trying to figure out all these transfer portal moves, right? I'm trying to figure it all out. It's my first swim in the ocean. There's large waves. You know, I'm trying to figure it all out. I was reminded that C.J. Daniels went to Miami from LSU. You know, there's a lot of information out there. Boise State, man, they don't get Chenti back, but they get 4 of their offensive linemen back, starting offensive linemen, a lot of their defense back. So I'm looking at all this, and I ended up with 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, Notre Dame in the G5 out of a 12-team playoffs. So I had a 3-3-2-2 from a 12-team playoff. So, you know, for me, even if there's a 14-team playoffs, yeah, most year the Big Ten's going to get 4. Most years the SEC is going to get 4, but not every year. If you just played it straight, not every year. And I don't like it because you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. What if the Big 12? What if the ACC? What if one of those programs get on a big old roll? What if they get a Roger Staubach at Navy? What if a Roger Staubach comes rolling into Morgantown and he is the phenomenal quarterback and he leads the Mountaineers to a college football playoffs and then a championship and then another championship? What if somebody in the Big 12 and the ACC goes Patrick Ewing on everybody, but it's in football? You know, you've seen the changes in the basketball world. You've seen what the SEC has done. If you had automatic qualifiers for SEC basketball locked in 4 or 5 years ago, how many automatic qualifiers would the SEC get? Barely any. The ACC would be getting them, but it changed, right? It changed. That's what I don't like about the automatic burst, because how do you unravel it if it isn't lining up to reality 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now? Anyways, that's just my thought. Just my thought. Okay, we're going to open up the phone lines. You can talk anything in college football your heart desires. We did not have much for the show, for the monologue. There wasn't much reporting because there wasn't much to report about. Tony Petitti did not say anything. Greg Sankey did not say anything. Excuse me.
Call from
Rick.
Rick is on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for taking the call. And I hope together we can figure out what Mr. Monty is proposing here.
Yeah, good luck. Did you listen to his show at all?
I did.
Okay.
And I struggled with it,
Yeah.
like you. A lot of what you said earlier in the show, I agree with, except for a couple of things. I think what he's suggesting is that, well, first of all, I don't think he's proposing it, because he came out and kind of said his sources were saying that it's being discussed.
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty broad brush, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like what they're talking about is almost a private equity league, where, and if I understand him correctly, most or all of the Big Ten and most or all of the SEC would be in this private equity league. And when I say private equity league, I mean they're all the teams, all the schools are agreeing to take private equity. Plus some of the ACC schools and some of the Big 12 schools, the ones that are for private equity. And you mentioned in earlier shows, haven't you, that the Big 12 is like half of them are for private equity and half of them aren't?
Yeah.
So those that would be for it, I guess that would be 16 schools, 8. Those 8 would go into the private equity league, and maybe 5 or 6 of the ACC schools. And he prefaced it with they'd be pulling out of the NCAA, and this would be for football only. They'd be withdrawing from the NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
And have this football super league.
Yeah, so I get it. He also said that each one of these teams that opted in to the Super League would need to be able to invest. Would need to be able to invest $1 billion a year. My God, I mean, that's a pretty
bold number.
That I don't know. That's the number he got, and he kept $1 billion. In 3 years from now, each team would have to invest $1 billion a year in football whatever. So I fell off my chair when he said that. Again,
I didn't hear that, but now that I hear it, wow.
Yeah, he said that more than once. Also, again, now I did not hear the whole show. I turned it on, listened to some of it, had to do something, listen to something. Again, did he specifically say like all these teams that opt into this new Super League, would it be divided up in divisions? Like, again,
no, I think everyone would be losing their conference identity.
Yeah.
So you just be your school name. Again, for football only.
Yeah.
There was also the part he had about, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, that $1 billion, I can't buy him. Obviously, the private equity is going to be able to throw money at whoever needs it, whoever needs more or anything. But it just appeared to me, absent that $1 billion part, that it could work with the remaining schools in the Big 12, and the remaining schools in the ACC, and all of the schools in the G5, absent maybe, a Boise State and a Memphis, would be doing their own college football regular as we know it, NCAA football. What else was it? Oh, he also, did you see the clip he had on the Utah head coach?
Kyle Whittingham?
Yeah.
Of a months, and I know I did not see any clip today, but it wasn't a clip of months ago when Kyle Whittingham said,
"Yeah,
big
predicting exactly what he was talking about."
Yeah, I mean, Whittingham said that months ago. He has said that a few times where he thinks something. He doesn't. I don't. I've never recalled Kyle getting into anything real specific. But he did say that, change is going to be happening. And
you might want to rehear that clip.
Okay.
There's a lot of specifics in there.
Yeah.
Bold. I mean, but that was pretty bold talk from Coach Whittingham. Yeah. And then last of all, I wanted to ask you real quick, and we'll get some other callers on. So the planes landed for 44221.
No, they haven't. I think it is going to land though, but I can't say that it landed because.
Well, wait a minute. I saw the clip of it today on the news. It was coming into Midway Airport.
Yeah. Okay.
Chicago.
Now, yeah,
it was already to land.
The pilot pulled up. Yeah. No, I get it. You're good. You're good, man.
Okay. So that's okay. Then I know what the answer to the next question is regarding the SEC's commitment to 9 games. That plane's still in the air too.
Yeah, that plane's still in the air. Everything's still in the air. There is, from what I've gathered, the SEC and the Big Ten have no issues with each other. They've agreed, like they know where this is going, and now it's just a matter of presentation. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you. Great call. I'm going to touch on something very sensitive here. I'm going to touch on I'm going to say this is the problem with this show, because
Call from
Wild Ute.
Wild Ute is on the line. Hold on, Wild Ute. Can you just hold on for a moment?
Of course.
I'm going to say something that is going to be very highly unpopular. This is why, Wild Ute, as you know, this is why this is the most unpopular college football YouTube channel in the country. I'm going to get in trouble here. The Big Ten, and I want people in the Big Ten fans just to relax when I say this. I'm going to be blunt. They are highly, the presidents that run the Big Ten universities and the faculties and they are highly elitist. They are highly cautious. Their legal department would not allow the Big Ten to have any real discussions with USC in the summer of 21. Only in the early spring of 22. They're highly cautious. And they don't like to play with others. It's why the Big Ten went to 9 conference games. It's why You remember the Brett McMurphy article that came out? And again, now the Florida State people are going to get mad at me, but I need to say this. I need to say this because I think sometimes we lose our bearings on this, for the good and for the bad. I'm not praising the Big Ten. I'm not ripping them. I'm just putting it out there. Remember the Brett McMurphy report when the Big Ten thought Florida State was a bad partner, a bad future partner because what they were doing to the ACC, taking them to court. Remember all that?
Of course.
Yeah. And you know, ESPN and Fox, they went all in it together. And the other kind, like they all kind of like, well, guess what? Florida State hasn't left the court yet. I mean, the Big Ten and the SEC, they are looking out for their best interest, what they consider the best interest. They're playing these power games. They've acquired it. They're going to use it. For them to somehow come out of the bloom out of all this and say, oh, Super League, everybody. They are so like, they're building the moat, man. They're building the wall. They're trying to go for the 4 out. They're going to get the 4 out of it. They're the opposite of creating everybody with a Super League. If you want to believe, this is my opinion now, okay? This is my opinion. If you want to believe in a Super League that would work, that would benefit everybody, that's something big, I think you should look at the crazy, radical, probably ain't going to happen, but the idea of the Big 12 and the ACC getting together. That is, if you're going to go big, that's about as big as it's going to get. And I don't think that's going to happen. But again, at least that has some logic. The Big Ten they're not even, it ain't happening. Wow, Jute, thanks for calling, my friend. What's going on? Let it rip. Tell me how wrong I got everything once again.
So number one, was going to speak about the Super League. Number two, wanted to talk about the clearinghouse.
Yes.
That's being discussed, the Deloitte clearinghouse. And let's just jump into the Super League. Yes, Kyle Whittingham has mentioned that over the next 2 to 4 years, he sees a Super League forming.
Yeah.
And that he sees the Super League being similar to like an NFL type model where the schools would just play each other and that no other schools would be playing in that realm and everything.
Yeah.
And you can interpret that like you'd like. My interpretation of what Whittingham's saying is something that I could see happening. I'm not predicting it's going to happen anytime soon. Mm-hmm. 40 of the biggest brands, most are going to be in the Big Ten and the SEC. Some are going to be in the ACC and maybe a few in the Big 12. 40 biggest brands, unequal revenue sharing in a league on its own. That's how I see it happening. If it happens, 40. It's going to cut a ton of schools out, and there's going to be gnashing of teeth across the board and stuff. But hey, if you want to maximize revenues, you're Ohio State, Alabama, unequal revenue sharing with 40 teams and a massive pot of money. That's just how you'd have to do it. Whittingham would probably agree with something like that because that's more of an NFL type model, 2020, make it more regional based on the 2020. But moving on from that idea, the Deloitte clearinghouse, okay? Yeah. I haven't heard anyone talk about this before, but I think that the Big Ten is giving up a massive advantage by agreeing to this, Greg. Like, have you really thought this through? Like, why the SEC wants the clearinghouse so bad? Why they want all this regulation?
Yeah, I have, and I get what you're saying.
What do you think I'm saying?
I don't think again, Big Ten they don't think like fans do. I think they probably are in agreement with making sure this Deloitte clearinghouse is first of all, it's going to be legit until it gets crushed by the courts. But before it gets crushed by the courts, I think they're willing to play ball with the SEC, wanting it to be strict, wanting it to be severe, not wanting any rabble out programs out there that pushes the market in a completely radical way, where you're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on a backup, left tackle. I think I do know that there's been some give and take on that, because we talked about it on our live show, a couple live shows, like Friday or Thursday last week, and then Ross Dillingham put out the article. Ross Dellinger put out the article yesterday. I do get what you're saying, because there's big money in some of those Big Ten coffers, those alumnus, those boosters. Yeah. And they got more money than the SEC. But I don't think...
Big Ten has so many billionaires supporting these programs. If you look at the SEC schools, there's not even a single billionaire that lives in the state of Alabama. Like, so the SEC, if you're looking at competitive balance versus the Big Ten, the biggest issue for you is if third-party NIL wraps up the value of each player and stuff, and you can't afford to actually pay the players like the Big Ten schools can because of the coffers of the third-party folks, the boosters.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be the biggest risk in their minds all the time, thinking about that. Like, how are we going to win championships if the Big Ten has a double, triple payroll that we can fund because of the huge booster support? So, in my perspective, that's the only thing they die on, is because we're like, hey, if the Deloitte Clearinghouse comes in, it automatically brings down the NIL valuations of all the players, likely.
Yes.
And so it's more budgetable, it's more appetizing, and we can compete. And it's not going to make the competitive balance based on third-party booster money. Anymore.
Yeah, and this is what the SEC wants, right?
Right.
And Petiti was given a whole bunch of money from his media partners. His media partners expanded with Washington and Oregon, USC, UCLA. And they are demanding this 4 automatic qualifiers. So, so now, they're scratching each other's backs, helping each other out. And I think they've got it all lined up, but not the big issues. There's a bunch of other issues, like, if Utah in 2026, if Utah behind Dampier, the second year of being a quarterback for Utah, I think he has at least another year eligibility remaining after this year.
2 years.
Okay.
Correct.
So Dampier leads Utah to the Big 12 championship game. I think Brett Yormark's going to fight for that Utah Utes team to either have the opportunity to have if you're going to have 16 teams, it's not going to be straight seeding. Make sure that Utah, a conference champion, gets a home game, if not a bye. So, and I think there's a whole bunch of other issues that are going to be fought over. But I think the auto qualifiers and this Deloitte, I think the SEC and the Big Ten are kind of hugging each other, dancing on the dance floor, and I think all that is a fait accompli.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if I'm the Big Ten, though, I don't do that. Why in the freaking world would you give up an advantage like you have with having no unregulated third-party NIL? Like you can control championships and have a run like we've never seen over the next 20 years because of the boosting support.
But you know what? The Big Ten has always been like that. The Big Ten has always tied its hands behind it. When it comes to pure athletic achievement, the Big Ten has always put hurdles in front of them. One of them is academics. I mean, for decades, the Big Ten has not been able to bring in student athletes in the same way that the SEC schools have been able to do. It's absolutely 100% true. I mean, there's a lot of people in the portal that the Big Ten won't even, they do that first check-in and they say, nah, this guy won't be able to get into our school. That has always been in the Big Ten. And look, the Big Ten has a lot of issues, a lot of massive scandals, right? Massive. I mean, the worst scandals are in the Big Ten when it comes to, treating women and children. And I mean, there's been some incredibly just horrific, evil actions inside Big Ten institutions. But what I'm talking about is the Big Ten has always handcuffed them. Like, they've always had this idea of, yes, athletic pursuit, but not in front of academic pursuit. So, I mean, Northwestern, I've always, like today, somebody on X was talking about how maybe Northwestern should be scraped away from the Big Ten. And I'm like, the Big Ten they're never leaving Northwestern behind. The academic pursuit is still important. The research is always going to be important. Ohio State benefits from Northwestern.
The clearinghouse, but in my understanding, the clearinghouse is based on booster money coming in and not school money. So if you're Ohio State and you're focused on the research, it makes no difference to the Buckeyes, but their boosters can pony up a ton of money on the side and stuff. That's not Ohio State's funds. It's not going to affect the research dollars. It's just the rich Ohio State and psycho football donors, just like the Michigan guy, the Oracle. The wife of the Oracle guy buying the Michigan player for $10 million.
You know what? let's be honest. Let's be blunt here. Wild Jude is on the line. Let's open this up. Let's be honest. The SEC, you know what? If they lose a championship if they lose to the Big Ten, it hurts, man. It hurts. It hurts, right? But if there is a program out there, like a Texas Tech, like a BYU, billionaire Wild Ute on the line starts funneling his billions of dollars into the Utah football program, right? They don't want there to be a renegade. They don't want there to be a programs out there that are going to take a shortcut around everything, the clearinghouse, and start piling up wins and championships over their SEC programs. They've allowed the Big Ten into the doors, right? Those advisory meetings. They've allowed the Big Ten into their homes. But they're not about to allow other people into their homes. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah. Good point.
Same thing with this private equity. I'm not, again, if you want to believe there's a super league being created, possibly being created, private equity being used in a big, massive scale, man, I would venture, again, complete speculation on my part, but I would look at Yormark and Phillips, not so much Sankey and Petiti.
Well, good stuff, Greg.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for letting me jump on.
You guys going live tonight, or what's going on?
Not live tonight, but we'll be live on Friday.
Okay.
Big Freaking Friday show.
Friday, maybe soon, I might have to join in. You're
always welcome.
I got to throw some elbows. Mowing isn't showing enough respect to my Golden Gophers. So I'm going to have to get up there and throw some elbows.
You're welcome anytime.
You got it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. You. All right. Wild Ute, my man. The great Wild Ute. Ryan Willie, Monty is full of bleep. All he's doing is try to get clicks. He's admitted in the past. He's worse than genetics, full of bleep. Thank you for the super chat, the evil badger, Ryan Willie.
Call from
Mr. Hot Guy is on the line. Immaculate, can you hold on for a second? I just want to say thank you to Ryan Willie for his continuous, incredible generosity to our channel. Thank you, Ryan Willie. I very much appreciate it. Waiting for your next phone call to talk about some Wisconsin Badgers. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it so very much. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything here. No, I haven't. Immaculate, what are your thoughts, my man? Let it rip.
Yeah, I think it's tough love time right now.
Tough love, my goodness.
Throw a few elbows here. I mean, first off, just real quick to top of this, because this is the most important thing, and I harp on it all the time, in governance, what's going on and what was announced, it kind of seems to me like a lot of the people reporting it don't really understand. But what happened was the House side is now trying to actually get ahead of the Senate side, and that tends to not just be like a showboating thing. That's we want to be the ones that have our names on the bill thing. Like, it's gone from where people are like, oh, this can't happen, to like, look, the House and the Senate are quite literally racing each other to be the ones that have their name on this thing. It's going to be big. And people can, once again, not believe it. That's fine. Like, I'm kind of at the point where I just don't give a bleep. Don't care. People can believe it or not. Gonna happen. It's the biggest thing, and it does carry into every other thing, including the CFP. When, those guys go in there and they're saying, oh, we're going to do this for 2025. Look, I bet so much money that they wish they could have just been like, you know what? We don't give a rat's beef either about 2025, because we can just go into 2026 and do this however the hell we want to. Yet they have determined to do it for 2025. Now, yes, that means some more money, but it's not that much more money. I mean, it's a headache for them. Mm-hmm. But they've determined that they have to do this. And I look at it any which way and say, to me, there's only one good explanation for that, and that's they need some of those people in that room to help them with the bigger thing, and that's governance. And I know I respect you on your opinion on it. You could be right. Maybe they do have most of it already laid out. They certainly seem to like to make that impression made through Dellinger and others.
Yeah.
But they also thought that in 2014,
mm-hmm.
and they got smoked by the NCAA just simply because they wouldn't play ball or whatever, like they got like the smallest of possible handouts. And so I think that even right up to the very edge of this thing, they're still negotiating this. Otherwise, they would have come out and be like, this thing is fait accompli. This is already in. Everyone is making plans based off the House settlement, going forward and paying players, but they're not going all in with things to do with once they have governance. The only thing that we've even seen of plans there is that agency that they want to set up, and that's, it doesn't happen unless they get the governance. So I still tend to think that they're in there, and they ran out of there pretty quick. It probably didn't go exactly as they wanted.
I think they got a lot of, I think they got, I don't think, not a whole lot of people in that room are going to agree with what the Big Ten and the SEC wants to do. In fact, none of them, right?
Yep.
Because it doesn't serve their interests. So, and I think Sankey and Petiti are trying to make sure about all the, collusion stuff. They just want to hear everybody, get the input from everybody. It sounds like there was not even any specific proposal. It was just a general discussion around 12, 14, 16. But you know what?
But for 8 hours.
Yeah, for 8 hours.
For 8 hours, though, brother.
Yeah. The thing is, everybody knows what the SEC and the Big Ten wants. Sure.
I mean, that's a negotiating point, and I'm with you on that. I just think when you look at the big picture,
this was how it was said to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, look, ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons people like watching the show is I am not fallible. I am Greg Flugar. You see my name. You see my face. You hear my ugly voice when I sing and when I talk. And when I report something, and if it turns out to be wrong, I'm going to be giving you the big L. I'm going to be taking the big L. Everybody, how do I say this? Everybody is going to be able to come out of whatever this college football playoff thing, which is not, as big as governance, but this college football playoff format for 26 and beyond everybody's going to come out of there with a talking point. Like, everybody's going to be saying, well, we got this. We used to not have that. Now we got this. And we'll keep working to, this conference. We're going to keep getting better, whatever.
Yep.
But what the Big Ten wants over everything else is those 4 automatic qualifying spots. And because, so the second most powerful football conference in the country is going to get their top priority. The SEC is going to get their top priority. And then the rest of it's going to be battled. That's what was told to me. It's that the Big Ten ain't walking out of here without the 4 because they've already got it all. They've got plans already, laid out and possible money, talking to CBS, they've been talking about this with their media partners forever. So that's all I can say. We'll see how it unravels, but that is where we're at.
And I get all that. That's the great information that you get a hold of, and that's all valid and viable. But you've got to make it happen in the boardroom. And if it was, we're just going to wait till 2026 and do our thing, I'd be like, oh, whatever you say they want, that's happening. That's it. Like, if that's what they want, that's what they're going to get. That's what they're going to do, because they can. But at this point in time, I have to ask, why do they care about 2025? And the only thing that makes sense, Greg, is to get everyone else in that room to vote with them. So while that might be what they've made big plans on, and it's what their TV partners want, it's still the governance thing. That's for all time. Once you have that, you can do whatever you want. You can make so many more things, so many more creations. You could sit here and do whole shows on just coming up with ideas of things that they could do because they could finally do it. So I think, some of those plans, they just might have to walk off together quietly, go talk and say, what are we willing to scrap and compromise on? Because that's what a real negotiation is about. When you walk into that room and you can't just have everything your way because you've decided that's the discussion you want to have, some of that might go out the door. And to me, what they're saying is, we need more data. That means they're going to go talk to ESPN because ESPN has all the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only reason you really need to go back to talk to ESPN is if it's for 16.
Yeah.
Does that correlate for you?
Yeah. No, that's the heavy,
on that part.
That's the heavy lifting. They're going to start doing some heavy lifting on that, which is, I think, is newsworthy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we've debated that before, and I think we've kind of come together on that.
Yeah.
They need to talk to ESPN to get numbers for going to 16.
Yeah.
And I've made this point many times. I think I've heard you talk about it too. Sometimes people think quiet is bad. Quiet is good. When these guys get loud, they're trying to affect something. They're trying to change something. They're trying to throw something in the works. When they're quiet, man, just walk out. Don't get anything wrong. Don't mess anything up because you don't know what you might say. Everyone's going to go after Patiti and thank you. Like, what'd you push for? What'd you grab? And if they've got other people in that room kind of being like, okay, all right, we're with you on this. They're quiet. I was expecting all kinds of statements today. To see what came out was kind of like, oh, that's a little underwhelming. But at the same time, I dare say that might be a good sign. And if we just got to be patient on that. Yeah. Larry's like, what additional governance are we talking about? We're talking about the autonomous conferences. They have a very limited scope of power in which they can act upon. They want that empowered. Dellinger even brought it up. Been talking about it for years now, myself, that they want that to have the power that they wanted to have in 2014. Mm-hmm. And with that, bringing that up, I want to do you a favor now, my friend. Mm-hmm. A certain person you've been talking about, just look at him as an entertainer. And if you get to that point, you'll appreciate him, because I appreciate him for what he is, because he brings a lot of people into the discussion. a lot of people, because, the real heavy, deep stuff just goes over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he makes it kind of entertaining so people can get into it. But otherwise, if you strain yourself trying to understand some of the things he says, you will hurt your brain.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the
All
Super
right,
League thing, my opinion real quick, all it is, brother, is subdivisions. That's it. And I know there's certain people, particularly ACC and Big 12, who really want to see that happen, because I get it. It would help level the playing field. But this is the drop in the elbow part, and then I'm out of here. The Big 10 and the SEC are not going to do that. The Big 12 and the ACC, you can't force them to do it. All they need to do to blow that whole thing up is just not do it. So, just leave it with that, man. The Super League talk, people need to understand it's just code. So, have a good night, brother. See you again soon. Hopefully we got some big news coming.
You got it. I appreciate it. Great call, sir. Immaculate.
From
Larry, the GM.
Larry, can you just hold on for one moment, please?
Yes, sir.
I got to fix something real quick here. Got to fix something. Everything is going pear-shaped in the studio once again. Fat guy from Minnesota is completely incompetent.
The fat guy from Minnesota is a genius, and we thankful you're here.
Well, you must be on your third Budweiser, my friend. Hold on. Okay, here we go. All right, Larry the GM, what do you got, my man? Let it rip.
All right, Greg. Greg, I'm serious about this. I bitch to my wife constantly about sports coverage and personalities and how wildly inaccurate and uninformed they are. I never do that with you. That puts you in a class of like less than 5 people that I do not complain about sports media about. So when I say what I just said, Greg, I mean it. I miss it when you don't have a podcast for us. You don't give us the peek around the corner. I miss it. So,
I appreciate it. Appreciate those kind words.
Number one, I am not upset with you picking my Texas Longhorns.
Okay, you're not upset today, but will you be upset on August 30th, the night of August 30th, when the Buckeyes roll over the Longhorns because I picked the Longhorns to win it all? That night, on August 30th, you're going to be turning to your wife. You're going to be turning to your wife and says, that Greg the Cooler did it to me again.
I will not be upset, Greg, because they can lose that game and still win the national championship.
True. Absolutely. Yep.
In fact, Greg, I would say to you that might be a model for many teams that actually are serious about winning the national championship, to actually play a hard non-conference game and set themselves up for their conference season to be better, given the fact that they're automatic qualifiers based on their performance in their conference.
Yes.
Having a good, hard game pre-conference may be a route that teams that are actually serious about wanting to win it all are going to need to take so that they can set themselves up properly.
Yep. Very good take. If you got the automatic qualifiers, which I do not like, but if you have them in there and they're coming, your pathway to the college football playoffs is your conference record. Your non-conference games is not going to be a lift. It may be on the margins to try to get that 5th spot of the conference or whatever. That's why, like this Nebraska not playing Tennessee. To me, that's a strictly economics, Nebraska, wanting that 8th home game for that particular year because they're having renovations, and lose, like, it's the conference record of Nebraska in 27 that is going to decide if Nebraska goes to the playoffs or not losing to Tennessee or defeating Northern Iowa, the difference in those two games. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. Go ahead, Larry the Jim. Sorry, interrupted.
Well, Greg, Astros fans will tell you that in my Astros coverage, I'm constantly saying, don't pay attention to rumors. Pay attention to what teams do. Pay attention to what the leadership in sports actually does, not what they say. And what Nebraska is actually telling you by, trying to duck out of that Tennessee game is they're more concerned about making sure that they set up to have a successful season versus actually trying to win a national championship. Because if they were really trying to win a national championship, they would keep that game just for what I just talked about, right? Okay, let's move on to a couple other things.
Yeah.
I agree with largely what Immaculate said. I think there are different layers of this discussion. I know I frustrate people in the Big 12 fandom and ACC fandom with my takes relative, but the realities are, Greg, the schools in the Power 2 conferences are operating at a different level than those schools in the Big 12 and the ACC. That's why the schools that were in the Pac-12 were so eager to get to the Big Ten. That's why Texas and Oklahoma were so eager to get the SEC, because they wanted to operate on the Power 2 level, not on that whatever we want to call the rest of the A4 level.
True.
They see themselves as programming. Texas has a 100,000 seat stadium, right? They're right up there with the big boys in the SEC. And,
it's also it's also the reason why Colorado met with Brett Yormark on May 7th in Chicago, because the offers that the Pac-12 was getting wasn't going to be as good as what the Big 12 was getting, plus they were getting a little bonus from the Big 12. It's the same reason why Boise State made that decision to go to the Pac-12. Out of them, everyone's looking for higher land. USC going to the Big Ten is higher land. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC is higher land. Absolutely true.
Right, because it's really interesting because Big 12 fans can look at the G5 programs and talk about them the same way I talk about the Big 12 and the ACC. Right? It's the same dynamic. It's just a different level. So, I know that you don't like the automatic qualifiers. I know that you ask questions like, well, what happens in a year that there's 3 or 4 great teams in the ACC or the Big 12? Well, that's why I think they're going to a 16-team. They're going to a 16-team field, because they're going to want to have the flexibility of the 3 at-larges. And if those conferences have those great years, then they're gonna be able to get their 3rd or 4th team in, and it's going to be good. What I think is going to be really interesting and it may not happen now, but I think it's going to happen eventually, is how the seeding actually occurs in the CFP, because I think we're going to get models where these Power 2 conferences are going to dictate that they want their champion to be the 1 and 2 seeds to go to the champion of the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're going to force this upon the rest, and that's going to be another bone of contention. But Greg, I think it's going to become clear over the next 5 to 10 years that those 2 leagues are operating at a different level. They're just going to have a level of competition that's going to exceed that. And I think if you put in the automatic qualifiers, it allows those conferences the flexibility to be really creative. I mean, you've done a great job of describing what can happen in the last week of the season with conference, where it's not just a conference championship game anymore. There's playing games. I will tell you, Greg, I believe eventually these two power conferences, as they reach the 18 to 20 team size, because one of the flaws I saw last year is Texas and Indiana did not have schedules that were on par with some of the other teams in their conferences. They just didn't. And I'm readily admitted, Texas' schedule wasn't on par with some of the other, with Oklahoma even. I mean, that's hard for a Longhorn to say, right? But Oklahoma got screwed in their schedule, and Texas got relatively an easy schedule. I think there's going to be ways that those conferences are going to look at the teams and say, look, we do have some teams that are really playing for the championship in our leagues, and we have teams that are not. And we're going to stratify within our conference, our 18 to 20 team conference, and we're going to set up an A tier and a B tier, and we're going to relegate and we're going to promote within. And that last week, that conference championship week, is not only going to be about, claiming a conference champion. It's not going to be only about claiming a playing game. It's also going to be a week of promotion and relegation. And promotion and relegation time in Premier League soccer is incredible viewing and important to those teams that are at the middle level of these leagues, right, Greg? And so I think you're going to see that, and a team like, okay, I'll pick on the Sooners and the Aggies, right? That's what the Longhorn would do. Those teams are kind of on the cusp of going up and down into that relegation or promotion level. They're going to want to get into that Tier A, and they're going to devote their resources to make sure they stay in Tier A. And I think that's going to promote even more of a separation of those power conferences from the rest of the conferences. I think, Greg, the other thing I'll say is what my advice to the ACC and the Big 12 is to partner with Notre Dame. So if there's you said it tonight, Greg, if there's a Super League to be done, it's those two conferences partnering together, maybe in the old Major League Baseball model where the American League and National League were separate entities, but they were combined within the major leagues. I could see a Super League that's an ACC league and a Big 12 league, and Notre Dame's in with the ACC. Now they can separate, but on that side in the Big 12. Maybe Big 12 takes the absolute best of the G5, like you get a Boise State and a couple other schools in there, and that is the I've called it the Mega League or the Mega Conference, Greg. Get away from the Super League model, to separate from that. I think that's the model, and I think they can build a really strong interest in that Mega League. Because I don't know that they're ever going to be able to compete with the SEC and the Big 10. And I know that's going to piss Big 12 fans and ACC fans off. But that's where I see us heading, Greg, is there's a third mega league that competes with those two power conferences, but it's at a slightly different level and engages Notre Dame. All right, I've talked a lot, Greg. I'll let you
got it.
Finish up.
I appreciate it. Today. Larry the Jam, appreciate the call, my man.
All right, take care.
You got
Bye-bye.
it. A couple things. While and I'm glad Larry the Jam made it clear, why I am been saying about the 4 automatic qualifiers of the Big Ten since September 9th of last year. Personally, I'm against it, but it's coming. It's absolutely coming. Far as what we have been told repeatedly, and I mean repeatedly, over and over and over again. But again, first of all, I do not believe in relegation at all. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in the Big Ten. I don't know why it would happen in the. You're talking about taking big L's. If that ever happens, I would be taking the biggest L of mankind. I don't see any of that happening. You don't need it. Whatever. I don't see that happening. In regards to teams not being able to compete if you're not in the Big Ten and the SEC, again, of course, every institution, every athletic department is looking at to get to the highest ground possible, to get above the stratification line when it comes to resources. USC did what they did to get the higher ground. Everyone's doing it. I mean, if you got an opportunity, you jump, you go to the higher ground. But that doesn't mean you can't compete. It just doesn't mean that, in my opinion. It doesn't. Yes, the SEC is going to continue to win the most national championships. The Big Ten is probably going to be right there, a little bit behind, maybe get ahead because of the change in landscape of NIL, but the Big Ten and the SEC, most resources. But I don't think that means that forever and ever and ever an ACC of the Big 12 cannot win a championship game, cannot win a playoff game, cannot win the national championship. I just don't see it that way. I really, there's only so many, there's a whole lot of great football players out there. Not all of them are recruited accurately. Ashton Genty, Boise State, there's going to be big examples this year. You've got, Texas Longhorns make way more, $100 million more than Arizona State in their athletic department. And Arizona State became an eyelash away from beating Texas. And that's just year one of the college football expanded playoffs. We're going to get crazier stories as we go on in year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 5. There's so many great football players. There are only so many spots to play on Ohio State. There's only so many spots to play on Michigan, on Texas, in Georgia. There's too many good players. They overflow. They go into Big 12 schools and ACC schools. And once in a while, if one of those schools line it up, if they line it up just perfectly, they can compete. They can compete. There's so many examples of that through college sports, in basketball, in hockey. The NCHC, supposed to be the best hockey conference in the country, and they are this year. Nah. The Big Ten is not supposed to be the best big hockey conference in the country, but suddenly, they've got like 3 teams that could win it this year. Things change. And I'm not saying the SEC is going to drop or the Big Ten is going to drop, but within football programs, you've got some football programs out there that have got a whole lot of money, but yet they're not performing, like Texas A&M. Texas A&M don't have a resource issue. When is the last time Texas A&M has won a conference championship? And then you've got some programs out there that don't have the resources, but yet they keep punching above their weight. So I don't think we can just look at, again, everyone's looking to get the higher land. Everyone's looking to get to increase their value. Everyone's looking at getting more resources. Everyone's looking to jump into the Big Ten and the SEC for good reason. It helps them pay their bills, to grow opportunities for the student athletes, to grow opportunities for the institution. Memphis would take a Big 12 invite in a heartbeat. UConn would take a Big 12 invite in a heartbeat. Kansas would take a Big 10 or an SEC invite in a heartbeat. But just because, I don't think it's automatic that nobody can compete for a national championship if you're not in the SEC and the Big Ten. That's how I feel about it. Look, and then when it comes to resources, the benefits of the resources, at some point, there is diminishing return. You only got so many guys on a roster. You only can pay so many for coaches. You only can have so many analysts. It comes to a point where that advantage cannot be increased anymore. It's not like you can go buy the 200 best football players. You're stuck with the roster. You're going to miss on recruiting. You're going to have injuries. So I think there's always going to be room for more competition outside, teams outside of the SEC and the Big Ten. Until that day comes where the Big Ten and the SEC leaves, forms their own Super League. Could happen in 2030, 31. They leave and they do their own thing. That could happen. It just wasn't going to happen in 26. Hopefully that doesn't happen because I think it hurts the sport, not helps it. Just my opinion. SMU. SMU. Look what they did in the ACC their first year. G5 going to the ACC, putting a whole lot of revenue into their, they're not even getting media money. Look at Texas Tech. What is the potential of Texas Tech right now? Look at Arizona State, for God's sake. This year, Sam Levitt is coming back. Tyson, the great receiver, is coming back. They've got Udo, the running back from Army. He may not be able to replace Cam Scatterbo. They've got their offensive line. They've got a whole bunch of defensive players. They're the second in the country in returning production. Arizona State's going to be a damn good football team. The SEC and the Big Ten have the advantages. No question about it. No question about it. No question about it. There are some programs out there like Nebraska. They've got all the money in the world. They've got a beast for a quarterback. Dylan Raiola. Matt Rule, a good head coach. Who knows? Nebraska could be springing upwards. Illinois, look what they're returning this year. Who knows what's going to happen, guys? But who knows what's going to happen with some of those programs in the Big 12 and the ACC? They could spring upward. I think Clemson's got to... Now, I don't know what they're doing at the running back position. They got to stop the run next year. Historically, Clemson has been able to stop the run. Historically, they have a great defensive line. Last year, they sucked. So I don't know what's going to happen this year, but they got some great returning wide receivers. Klubnik. I think Miami's going to have one hell of a team. I think Carson Beck, you guys know, I love Carson Beck. He had brutal receivers at Georgia last year. And if they get the ball to Nate Frazier, number 4, give him the rock. Give him the rock. So we've got a lot of stories we got to cover during the off season. TCU upset Michigan. Yeah, of course, Arizona State. I think I erased it. Yeah, Arizona State, man. And then Dampier, that story, the quarterback of Utah, that is interesting. And then you got Colorado. You got, I don't know. Look, maybe it's because I don't think Carson Beck's overrated. I think he's damn good. His receivers sucked last year, guys. In Georgia's receivers were so bad that it hurt their whole offense and how they ran things, and it was so clunky, and they had no faith. But yeah, Arizona State, man, they're number 2 in the country for returning production. And go watch all the tapes of Sam Levitt, the quarterback. Go watch him when he came in at Michigan State. When the Gophers blew out Michigan State, the Gophers the last 2 times the Gophers have played the Spartans, they have blown them out the door. I mean, I think one was a shutout. I don't know. Both were complete blowouts. But the second blowout, Michigan State brought in their third-string quarterback, Sam Leavitt, and he looked great against the Gophers. Outstanding. And then he transferred to Arizona State because Rob Dillingham saw that. And then look at the last few games of Sam Leavitt. Look at the game against Texas. Look at some of the plays that he made. Other quarterback, his legs, his arm, but his legs running, throwing the ball accurate when he's running around. I mean, he was electric. I don't think there is enough being said about Mr. Leavitt. There isn't. Unless you go to the ranking, like the possible 2026 NFL quarterbacks, he's up there number 1, number 2, number 3. The NFL draft nicks, they know how great Leavitt is. But I think the college football fans, because he doesn't play in the SEC and the big, I mean, he is outstanding. So, and if you got a great quarterback, man, you can make a run. You can win it all. You can. It's tough. It's not easy. Only one national championship per season. Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us. I do appreciate it. Again, not a whole lot of news in regards to the summit meeting of all 10 commissioners of the FBS and Notre Dame. But I think we have a little bit of a war going on, between the commissioners. I think Petitti and Sankey are in total agreement. I think they know where this is going for the biggest issues that are important to them, and the other ones are going to be compromised and battled out. I still believe we're going to see a 4-4, 2-2-1 and a 14 or 16 team playoffs, but there is a lot to be decided. Again, we talked about it first here at Peek Around the Corner. We gave the Peek Around the Corner late last week, talking about what the SEC wanted. They wanted that clearinghouse to be strict, to be legit, to be swift, to be punishable, an enforcement arm that works. And we said in a couple of days there's going to be articles written about it. And then Ross Dellinger put out the article. The SEC is going to get what they want. The Big Ten is going to get what they want. And hopefully everybody gets going down this road, a road that I don't want college football to go down, but we're going down the road. Hopefully the other entities out there get increased certainty in their access. Big 12 and ACC getting 2 each. Anyways, I want to thank you all. If you've enjoyed our content today, please smash the like button. Subscribe to our channel. Keep your head on a swivel. If there's breaking news later tonight, we'll come back on. Breaking news tomorrow, we're going to be on here. College football's Peek Around the Corner. Please, until next time, from all of us here at PATC, the fat guy from Minnesota and the little general, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.